The Christianization of the British Isles is a story of missionaries, royal conversions, and cultural transformation. From Roman influence to the missions of St. Patrick and St. Augustine of Canterbury, and even the Viking invasions, the spread of Christianity was marked by both peaceful persuasion and moments of conflict. This profound shift reshaped the region's identity, leaving a lasting spiritual legacy. Although Britain's conversion to Christianity is often associated with the missions of later centuries, the initial introduction of Christianity can be traced back to the Roman occupation of Britain. As part of the broader Roman Empire, Britain was exposed to Christian ideas, particularly as Christianity spread across Roman territories in the first few centuries. The presence of Christians in Roman Britain is evidenced by inscriptions and other artifacts, such as the Christian wall paintings found at the Lullingstone Roman villa in Kent. However, while Roman Britain had pockets of Christian activity, it remained largely pagan throughout the Roman period. The Romans did not officially promote Christianity until 380 AD. Instead, the faith spread through interactions with other parts of the empire. The most notable early Christian figure in Britain is St. Alban, who is considered the first British Christian martyr. His story, while somewhat legendary, also confirms that there were local Christian communities in Britain during late antiquity. After the Roman withdrawal in the early 5th century, Britain fell into a period of political fragmentation and instability. The collapse of Roman authority led to the decline of organized Christianity, and the island returned to a religious landscape dominated by Celtic paganism. But a few decades later in Celtic Ireland, where the Romans had never established a presence, Christianity arrived through missionary activity in the early 5th century, particularly through work of St. Patrick, who arrived in Ireland around 432 AD. St. Patrick was born in Britain, but at the age of 16, he was captured by Irish raiders and taken to Ireland as a slave. After 6 years, he escaped, returned to Britain, and later became a Christian missionary. Around 432, Patrick returned to Ireland with the mission of converting the Irish people to Christianity. Irish Christianity grew rapidly, largely independent of Rome, creating a distinctive form of Christianity that incorporated some elements of Celtic tradition. The Irish monasteries became centers of learning and culture, preserving classical texts and Christian writings during the turbulent centuries that followed. A few decades after the Romans left Britain, the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes invaded, bringing their own Germanic pagan beliefs and diversifying even more the religious landscape. The most pivotal moment in the Christianization of the Anglo-Saxons came in 597, when Pope Gregory I sent a mission to Britain headed by St. Augustine of Canterbury. At this time, the Anglo-Saxons had already settled in Britain after the collapse of Roman authority and had retained their pagan beliefs. Pope Gregory's mission was a response to the growing need to convert the Anglo-Saxon rulers, who had been influenced by the Christian practices of neighboring kingdoms such as the Franks. St. Augustine was a monk from Rome, chosen for his scholarly background and missionary zeal. His mission was endorsed by King Ethelbert of Kent, who had married Bertha, a Christian princess from the Frankish kingdom. Ethelbert's relationship with Bertha played a significant role in facilitating the acceptance of Augustine's message, as it created a favorable environment for the new faith. Augustine's approach was pragmatic. Rather than forcibly converting the people, he adapted existing religious practices to fit Christian rituals. For example, he allowed the use of local temples for Christian worship, transforming them into churches rather than demolishing them. Over time, King Ethelbert converted, and he provided Augustine and his fellow missionaries with resources to build a church in Canterbury, which became the heart of Christianity in England. The spread of Christianity from Kent into other Anglo-Saxon kingdoms was not immediate, but gained momentum as rulers saw the advantages of aligning with the Christian faith, which offered stronger ties to the powerful Christian kingdoms of Europe. Over several decades, the faith spread to East Anglia, Wessex, and Northumbria, often through the efforts of missionaries from Kent. From Ireland, missionaries such as St. Columba spread Christianity to Scotland, founding the monastery at Iona in 563 AD. This became a key center for evangelizing the northern parts of the British Isles, particularly among the Picts. These Celtic monasteries had a major impact on Christian practices in the British Isles, with Irish monks like St. Aidan playing a key role in reintroducing Christianity to Northumbria after the death of King Edwin led to a pagan resurgence, for example. Despite the success of Celtic Christianity, a rivalry developed between the Celtic and Roman traditions, especially with regard to the calculation of Easter. This disagreement was resolved at the Synod of Whitby in 664, where the Roman method of determining the date of Easter was accepted. This decision marked the beginning of the process of unifying the Church in Britain and aligning it more closely with the broader Christian world. The Viking invasions of the 8th and 9th centuries presented significant challenges to the Christianization of the British Isles. The Vikings, who had initially arrived as raiders, were primarily pagan. Their attacks on Christian monasteries, such as the infamous sacking of Lindisfarne in 793, highlighted the vulnerability of Christian institutions. However, the Vikings themselves would eventually adopt Christianity, particularly through contact with Christian rulers and missionaries. The conversion of the Vikings began with their leaders, notably through the influence of King Olaf Tryggvason of Norway. Olaf was a zealous Christian who actively sought to convert the Norse population, using both force and persuasion. By the end of the 10th century, Viking communities in Britain, including the Danelaw region, had largely embraced Christianity. The process of Viking conversion was a gradual one, but it marked a significant shift in the religious landscape of the British Isles. The Norman conquest of 1066 marked a shift in British Christianity. William the Conqueror introduced Norman bishops and reformed the Church's structure, aligning it more closely with continental Europe's practices. As Norman rule transitioned into the Plantagenet era, King Richard the Lionheart, famous for his role in the Third Crusade, exemplified the era's entanglement of faith and politics. His leadership in the Crusades not only demonstrated the central role of Christianity in medieval identity, but also reinforced the idea of kingship linked with divine duty. The late medieval period saw the Church in Britain facing challenges from within and without. Popular piety flourished, as evidenced by pilgrimages to shrines like Canterbury and Walsingham, but dissatisfaction with corruption and wealth within the clergy grew. John Wycliffe, a 14th century scholar, and his followers, the Lollards, were early critics of church practices, advocating for vernacular scripture and challenging clerical authority. Though suppressed, these ideas foreshadowed later reform movements. The English Reformation was a political and religious upheaval that began in the early 16th century. It was largely driven by the actions of King Henry VIII, who sought to annul his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. When Pope Clement VII refused the annulment, Henry broke from the Roman Catholic Church, establishing the Church of England in 1534 with the Act of Supremacy, declaring himself as its supreme head. This separation was not initially motivated by doctrinal differences, but by political and personal reasons, such as securing an heir to the throne. Under Henry's reign, England remained largely Catholic in its teachings, though the king suppressed Catholic dissent. After Henry's death, his son Edward VI pursued more overtly Protestant reforms, adopting Lutheran and Calvinist influences and enforcing English translations of the Bible and Protestant liturgies. When Mary I, a staunch Catholic, ascended to the throne in 1553, she attempted to reverse the Reformation, leading to the persecution of Protestants, earning her the nickname Bloody Mary. However, after her death in 1558, Elizabeth I restored Protestantism through the Elizabethan religious settlement, which sought a middle ground between Catholicism and Protestantism. This established the Church of England as the state religion, with a Protestant doctrine, but maintained many Catholic practices in ritual and hierarchy. The Welsh Reformation followed England's lead after the Acts of Union, making Wales part of the Church of England. Anglican Protestantism spread, and the Welsh Bible was translated in 1588 to promote Protestant teachings, and the Church of England became the dominant faith in Wales. In Scotland, the Reformation was driven more by religious conviction than in England, fueled by the ideas of reformers such as John Knox. The Scottish Reformation, which took place in the 16th century, was marked by a struggle against the authority of the Pope and the Catholic Church. Influenced by the works of Martin Luther and John Calvin, Knox and other reformers sought to eliminate Catholic practices and establish a Presbyterian form of church government, which emphasized the role of elected elders and ministers rather than bishops. The Scottish Parliament formally adopted the Reformation in 1560 with the Scottish Parliament's Act of the Confession of Faith, which rejected papal authority and Catholic doctrine. The Church of Scotland, a Presbyterian body, became the state religion, and Protestantism firmly took root despite resistance from Catholic factions. Attempts to impose Protestantism in Ireland were less successful than in England or Scotland due to strong resistance from the Irish populace and Gaelic nobility. Though much of Ireland was under English control, it largely remained Catholic despite efforts by English monarchs. The Protestant Church of Ireland was established but had little influence. Resistance persisted, culminating in the Cromwellian conquest and widespread persecution of Irish Catholics. Overall, Christianity significantly shaped the British Isles, influencing culture, laws, and identities. The spread of Protestantism in England, Scotland, and Wales transformed national identities, while Ireland's Catholic resistance created lasting tensions. Christianity's legacy remains central to the region's history and traditions. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my other content on theology and Christian history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.